The Gallic Wars transformed Caesar's fortunes. He had expanded Rome's territory, secured vast wealth, and gained the unwavering loyalty of his legions. His military achievements elevated him to near mythical status, but they also alarmed his political rivals in Rome. The Senate, led by conservative figures like Cato and Pompey, grew increasingly wary of Caesar's power. They saw his successes not as victories for Rome, but as steps toward tyranny. Caesar's time in Gaul had made him a hero to the people, but it had also set the stage for a deadly confrontation back home. As Caesar returned from Gaul, he faced a choice: surrender his command and risk obscurity, or march on Rome and seize power. What followed would bring an end to the Republic and usher in the age of empire. Back in Rome, Caesar's enemies were growing in number. Chief among them was Pompey, once his closest ally in the First Triumvirate. Their partnership had been built on political necessity, but as Caesar's influence grew, so did Pompey's fear of losing control. The Senate, under Pompey's influence, demanded that Caesar disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. To them, Caesar's military power and popularity represented a dangerous step toward tyranny. In January of 49 BC, Caesar faced a momentous choice: comply with the Senate's order and risk losing his power, or defy them and risk plunging Rome into civil war. At the heart of this decision lay the Rubicon River, the boundary separating his province from the Roman heartland. To cross the Rubicon with his army was an act of treason, a declaration of war against the Senate and Pompey. It was said that as Caesar approached the river, he hesitated, weighing the enormity of his actions. Finally, he uttered the famous words, "Alia iacta est," the die is cast. With that, Caesar led his legions across the Rubicon, signaling the start of a civil war that would determine the fate of Rome. The crossing of the Rubicon threw Rome into turmoil. Pompey and the Senate fled to Greece, leaving Caesar to march unopposed into Rome. His strategy was bold and decisive. He moved quickly to secure Italy, winning over cities and their populations with promises of clemency. Meanwhile, Pompey amassed his forces in the east, confident that his larger army and naval superiority would crush Caesar. But Caesar's genius lay in his speed and adaptability. The decisive confrontation came in 48 BC on the plains of Pharsalus in Greece. Pompey's army outnumbered Caesar's nearly 2-1, but Caesar's veterans were battle-hardened and fiercely loyal. The battle began with Pompey's forces pressing their advantage, but Caesar's tactical brilliance soon turned the tide. Using a hidden reserve of troops, he launched a devastating counterattack that shattered Pompey's lines. The once great general fled the battlefield, seeking refuge in Egypt, where Pompey met a tragic end, assassinated by the orders of Egypt's young king, Ptolemy XIII. After the defeat and death of Pompey in Egypt, Caesar found himself caught in a volatile political struggle between the young pharaoh Ptolemy and his sister Cleopatra. Cleopatra sought Caesar's support to reclaim her throne, and their alliance, both political and personal, would soon ignite the Alexandrine War. Ptolemy, angered by Caesar's favor toward Cleopatra, launched an attack to drive Caesar out of Alexandria. With a limited number of troops, Caesar was besieged in the royal palace, fighting to maintain his position in a hostile city. The siege of Alexandria was marked by brutal street fighting and a desperate struggle for control of the city. During the conflict, a fire broke out in the harbor, consuming parts of the city, including the famed Library of Alexandria, a tragic loss for human knowledge. Despite being outnumbered, Caesar's strategic brilliance turned the tide. Reinforcements from Rome arrived, and with Cleopatra's support, Caesar defeated Ptolemy's forces decisively. Ptolemy drowned while attempting to flee, and Cleopatra was restored to the throne as Egypt's sole ruler. With the Alexandrine War concluded, Caesar and Cleopatra's alliance grew deeper. Legend has it that Cleopatra, known for her cunning and charm, arranged to be smuggled into Caesar's quarters, rolled up in a carpet. This daring act captivated Caesar, and the two soon formed a partnership that was as personal as it was political. Their alliance was mutually beneficial. Cleopatra secured Caesar's support in her bid to rule Egypt alone, and Caesar gained a powerful ally in the wealthiest kingdom of the ancient world. Following their victory over Ptolemy, Caesar and Cleopatra embarked on a grand tour of Egypt, famously sailing down the Nile together. Their relationship was not without its consequences. Cleopatra gave birth to a son, whom she named Ptolemy Caesar or Caesarion, claiming he was Caesar's child. Though Caesar never officially acknowledged him, the boy became a potent symbol of their bond. Julius Caesar returned to Rome in 46 BC as the undisputed master of the Roman world. His military campaigns had crushed his enemies, and his reputation as a conqueror and leader was unrivaled. With his rivals defeated and his popularity soaring, Caesar took the unprecedented step of having himself appointed dictator perpetuo, dictator for life in 44 BC. This position granted him absolute authority over Rome's government, bypassing the traditional checks and balances of the Republic. Caesar began a series of sweeping reforms aimed at stabilizing Rome and consolidating his power. He reorganized the calendar, creating the Julian calendar, which remains the basis for the modern system. He expanded the Senate, adding loyal supporters and representatives from the provinces, a move that angered the traditional Roman elite but strengthened his control. Caesar's reforms went beyond politics. He sought to address the deep social and economic issues that had plagued the Republic for years. He passed laws to reduce debt, redistribute land to veterans and the poor, and build infrastructure to revitalize Rome. But these changes came at a cost. To his supporters, Caesar was a visionary leader who sought to bring stability to a fractured state. To his enemies, he was a tyrant, dismantling the Republic in favor of personal rule. The tension between Caesar and the Senate reached a boiling point. As Caesar planned further reforms and military campaigns, whispers of conspiracy began to spread in the halls of power. Caesar's unprecedented authority and disregard for the traditional republican system alarmed many senators. His growing list of titles, Father of the Fatherland, Imperator, and Dictator for life, and his acceptance of near-divine honors convinced his critics that he sought to crown himself king. For the Roman elite, the idea of monarchy was anathema, a direct betrayal of the Republic's founding principles. A group of senators began plotting to remove Caesar. Among them were men who had once been close to him, including Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus, in particular, struggled with the decision, torn between his loyalty to Caesar and his commitment to the Republic. The conspirators believed that Caesar's death was the only way to restore the Republic. Their plan was bold yet simple. Strike Caesar down in the Senate, the very heart of Roman political life, where weapons were forbidden and Caesar would be most vulnerable. On the morning of March 15, 44 BC, Caesar ignored several ominous signs. His wife Calpurnia had been plagued by nightmares, begging him to stay home. A soothsayer had famously warned him to beware the Ides of March, but Caesar, confident in his position and dismissive of superstitions, went to the Senate as planned. As Caesar entered the theater of Pompeii, the attack began suddenly. The first dagger struck. Shocked and unable to defend himself, Caesar was set upon by more than 60 conspirators. According to legend, Caesar resisted at first, but when he saw Brutus among the attackers, he uttered the famous words, "Ea tu Brute, you too Brutus." Moments later he fell, stabbed 23 times. His lifeless body lay at the base of a statue of Pompey, his former ally turned rival, an ironic end to one of history's greatest figures. The death of Julius Caesar sent shockwaves through Rome. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic, but instead they unleashed chaos. Caesar's assassination marked the beginning of the end for the Roman Republic, as his death created a power vacuum that would soon lead to another civil war. Caesar's assassination plunged Rome into chaos once again. His adopted heir Octavian, alongside Mark Antony and Lepidus, formed the second triumvirate to avenge him. The eventual rivalry between Octavian and Antony culminated in the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. Octavian emerged victorious and became Rome's first emperor, Augustus. The Republic was no more. The Roman Empire was born, and its foundations were laid by none other than Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar's life reshaped Rome's political landscape. His name became synonymous with power, inspiring titles like Kaiser in Germany and Tsar in Russia.